Medellín, Colombia, 1943. A city stitched together with rusted metal and blood, where the hills whispered secrets, and the streets never forgot a debt. A place where dreams came cheap, and life came cheaper. This was no paradise. It was a furnace. And in that furnace, something dark was forged. Griselda Blanco was born into nothing. No safety net, no sanctuary. Only a mother who sold her body to feed her children. And men who saw girls not as daughters, but as prey. She didn't grow up in a home. She grew up in the shadows, in alleyways and brothels. In a world where innocence wasn't lost, it was taken. By 11, she had a knife in her hand and a plan in her head. She kidnapped a boy from a wealthy neighborhood, held a gun to his skull, watched him cry. When no ransom came, she pulled the trigger. Not out of rage, but curiosity. She wanted to know what power felt like. At 13, she was in Bogotá, lifting wallets, hustling strangers, running with thieves, not just surviving, climbing. Because to her, crime wasn't a sin. It was the language of power. By 14, she had already killed again. This time for control. This time to send a message. And it worked. People stopped looking at her. They started looking out for her. Griselda wasn't a child anymore. She was a ghost with a blade. A predator hiding behind a girl's eyes. Because to her, the world wasn't cruel. It was pathetic, weak. Software and weakness, she believed, wasn't something to fear. It was something to feast on. She wasn't trying to survive Medellín. She was learning how to conquer it, one scar at a time. Queens, New York. 1970s. Thousands came chasing the American dream. Griselda came to conquer it. She arrived with a fake passport, 3 kids, and a suitcase full of nothing. No English, no allies, no mercy. Most immigrants looked for jobs. She looked for weaknesses. She watched street corners like chessboards, saw where the cracks were. And in between those cracks, she started building an empire. Her first product? Colombian cocaine, pure, uncut, still rare in the US. But Griselda saw the wave coming, and she planned to surf it first. While others moved bricks with gangs and guns, Griselda got creative. She designed undergarments lined with powder, baby carriages stuffed with grams, drug mules trained like soldiers, silent, loyal, replaceable. No one suspected her. She was short, female, just another face in the boroughs. That was her weapon. She built distribution networks through bodegas, nightclubs, crooked cops. And if someone stole, they disappeared. If someone questioned her, they bled in front of their families. New York was watching. The DEA started tapping phones. People whispered about a mysterious Latina moving product like a ghost. But Griselda didn't panic. She relocated. Because while most traffickers fought for turf, she treated America like a chessboard. And her next move? Miami. Where the sun was bright, the laws were soft, and the demand for cocaine was about to explode. She didn't leave New York in fear. She left it as a warning. The Queen was coming south, and hell was coming with her. Miami. 1980s. Palm trees swayed, yachts gleamed, and blood soaked the sidewalks in silence. Cocaine had turned the city into a gold rush, and Griselda Blanco was its first queen. But this wasn't royalty built on jewels. It was built on bullets. She didn't enter the Miami scene. She invaded it, with an army of killers on motorbikes, helmeted, masked, and merciless. She brought a new style of execution. Quick, public, unforgettable. Shoot, vanish, no trace. Her enemies didn't die in back alleys. They died in traffic, in restaurants, in broad daylight. Because fear, she believed, wasn't enough unless it was witnessed. She imported more cocaine than anyone before her, tons at a time, packed into fake appliances, furniture, meat shipments. And she didn't just move product. She moved cities, police departments, courtrooms, bank accounts. If a politician wouldn't play her game, they vanished. If a witness talked, their house turned into a graveyard. And still, people followed her. Why? Because she paid. She rewarded loyalty. She made killers feel like kings, and she made the weak feel protected until they weren't. But behind the empire was chaos. Griselda trusted no one. She slept with a gun under her pillow, and a second under her child's crib. She ran her family like a cartel, and her cartel like a death cult. 3 husbands, all dead, each one richer than the last, each one buried faster than the one before. She didn't just gain power through violence, she maintained it through absence of regret. They called her the Black Widow, not just because she killed the men in her life, but because she wove webs no one escaped from. To the public, she was invisible. To the street, she was untouchable. And to her enemies, she was inevitable. Cocaine wasn't just Griselda's business, it was her religion, and the streets of Miami, her altar. By the early 80s, she was pulling in over $80 million a month. That's nearly $3 million every day, all in untraceable blood-stained cash. But Griselda didn't count money. She counted control. Her shipments flew from Colombia to Florida like clockwork, hidden in coffins, hollowed-out televisions, even live animals. She built front companies across Miami, travel agencies, flower shops, fake bakeries. But every rose in that shop was laced with powder. Every plane ticket booked was a smuggling route. And behind it all, her. A woman with no formal education, no military training, no mercy. Griselda turned deals into death traps. She held meetings with a smile, then ordered hits before dessert. She signed million-dollar contracts in one hand, and death warrants in the other. Disloyalty, torture, theft, execution, disrespect, erasure. She didn't run a cartel. She ran a machine of punishment. Cold, clean, and mechanical. And she wasn't afraid to get personal. Griselda once ordered a hit on her own lover because he flirted with another woman. The woman? Gone. The man? Shot in the face while drinking coffee. And still, people feared her less than they respected her. Why? Because she was smart. Smarter than her rivals. Smarter than the cops. She kept her face out of the headlines, but her fingerprints on every dollar that passed through the city. And she made one thing brutally clear. This wasn't business. This was war. And Griselda didn't play to win. She played so no one else could. Power protects. But only for so long. Griselda Blanco built her empire on violence, but she built her faith on blood. The blood of her own children. She had 4 sons. She called them Los Muchachos. Raised them not with lullabies, but with gunfire. Not with fairy tales, but with escape routes. They weren't just heirs. They were tools, mules, messengers, princes of a bloody kingdom. By the time they were teenagers, they knew how to count kilos, bribe officials, and fire automatics blindfolded. But the higher she rose, the more paranoid she became. She moved from mansion to mansion, surrounded by dogs, cameras, guards, slept in different beds every night, trusted no one, not even the people who shared her last name. 1 son disappeared, 2 others were murdered in drug wars, not by enemies, but by former allies turned rivals. Men she once dined with, men she once made rich. Miami was changing. Too much blood, too many headlines, too many bodies piling up in the sun. And Griselda had made too many enemies. The DEA was watching. The Colombians wanted her gone. Even Pablo Escobar, once her admirer, started calling her a liability. She tried to flee, tried to go quiet, but it was too late. In 1985, she was found living in a modest home in California, hiding in plain sight. No mansions, no guns, just silence, as if the queen had already buried herself. Federal agents kicked down the door. No resistance, no shootout, just a woman in her 40s, wearing a robe, holding a cup of coffee. They cuffed her in front of her children. And in that moment, Griselda didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't blink. She looked at the agents and said, "You're 30 years too late." Federal prison was supposed to be the end. For most traffickers, it is. A cold cell, a locked door. A name forgotten. But Griselda Blanco wasn't most traffickers. She didn't walk into prison broken. She walked in like she owned the place. Her trial was front-page news. Dozens of murders. Billions in drug revenue. A trail of bodies from Medellín to Miami. Prosecutors painted her as the devil in heels. The architect of America's bloodiest drug war. But Griselda didn't flinch. She smiled through the testimony. She wore makeup to court like it was a coronation. And when they tried to push the death penalty, her defense team pulled a miracle. Witnesses went missing. Evidence collapsed. Jurors started to whisper about accidents waiting to happen. In the end, the government backed down. No death row. Just 20 years behind bars. And even that didn't stop her, because prison for Griselda wasn't exile. It was a new headquarters. She still gave orders, still moved money, still had loyalists on the outside who feared her name more than the law. Some said she made deals from her prison phone. Others claimed she bribed guards. One rumor said she planned another empire, this time from behind the fence. Even locked away, she was untouchable, a ghost with a pulse. An empire wrapped in orange fabric. The FBI kept watching her. Other inmates gave her space. Even in chains, Griselda cast a long shadow. And when she was finally released, after nearly 2 decades, she didn't hold a press conference, didn't sell her story, didn't write a book. She just disappeared, back into the belly of Medellín. No spotlight, no speeches. Only whispers in the streets. La Madrina is back. Medellín, Colombia. September 3rd, 2012. A butcher shop. Late afternoon. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The smell of raw meat hanging in the air. Griselda Blanco, once the most feared woman in the Western Hemisphere, was now just an old lady standing in line for beef. No bodyguards, no entourage, no armored SUV waiting outside. She had returned to Medellín after prison as a ghost, not to rebuild, but to vanish. She lived in quiet, in shadows, in the very city where she'd once drawn maps in blood. No headlines, no visitors, just a name that still made men flinch, even if they didn't know why. But some debts never disappear. Some sins echo too long. And on that afternoon, while she counted pesos at the counter, a motorcycle pulled up to the curb. 2 men. Helmets. Silence. The butcher looked up, recognized the eyes beneath the visor, but it was already too late. 2 shots, one to the head, one to the chest. Griselda Blanco hit the floor before her change was returned. The killers didn't run. They didn't shout. They simply rode off, as calm as they came. No witnesses followed. No sirens howled. Just silence. And the sound of blood on tile. The woman who had invented motorcycle assassinations died by the same method she had unleashed on hundreds. Poetic justice? Some called it that. But the truth? It wasn't justice. It was tradition. In that world, legends don't retire. They get buried. There was no funeral fit for a queen. No crowds. No mourners. No gold-trimmed coffin. Just a small grave. A quiet name etched in stone. And a city too afraid to say it out loud. But her death didn't kill the story. It fueled it. Because in the slums of Medellín, in the back rooms of Miami, her name still circles like smoke. Young traffickers study her moves like scripture. Women in the game call her a blueprint. Men who once cursed her name now mimic her brutality. Griselda Blanco didn't fade. She multiplied. Griselda Blanco died on the cold floor of a butcher shop. But her story never stayed buried. In the years after her death, her legend grew. Not because of what she left behind, but because of what she proved. She didn't rise in a man's world. She tore it apart, brick by brick, body by body. She wasn't invited to the table of narcos. She built her own, then flipped theirs just to watch it burn. The DEA obsessed over her. Cartel bosses mimicked her strategy, but never her style. She taught the game that fear could be feminine, that elegance could be lethal, that a mother could be a monster, and that the most dangerous weapon wasn't a gun. It was a woman with nothing to lose. Today, her sons are gone. Her enemies buried. Her kingdom scattered. But her fingerprints? Still everywhere. Every time a rival is executed on a bike, that's her. Every woman rising through the ranks of organized crime, that's her echo. Every cartel boss who mixes brutality with strategy, terror with charisma, that's her blueprint. Netflix made series. Rappers dropped her name. Journalists called her the Queen Pin, the cocaine godmother. But those words fall short. She wasn't just the first. she was the only. Because Griselda didn't want your respect. She didn't need your love. She only wanted your obedience. And when that failed, your silence. She wasn't a myth. She was a machine. And machines don't die. They get replaced, upgraded, reborn in new hands, new faces. And somewhere right now, a little girl is watching the world burn, just like Griselda once did, and thinking, if no one's going to save me, I'll become the nightmare they fear. She didn't just rule the underworld. She redefined who could wear the crown. Griselda Blanco, not just a queen, a revolution wrapped in a trigger.